I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. I do have, there's one addition to the agenda for commissioner business, and I'm going to ask that you call that first if you're able to do that. That would be for the board's consideration of award for the sealed bid regarding the mobile home located at 338 Park Drive in Hotchkiss. It's important that this is added. The information in regard to this bid was not available when the agenda was posted late last week. The bid opening on this was not until December 12th. The other issue with this is there's a pursuant to the bid, there's a relatively short time frame that the county is requiring the successful bidder to remove the mobile home from the property there, the county property. And so there's kind of an emergent nature, and this would not wait until the board's next meeting on
Next year.
January 7th. So those are the reasons why it's important that this is added at this time. So, thank you.
Okay. And do we open the sealed bids or?
You want to do it after constituent time?
You can do that after constituent time, it's fine, but I'm just saying, I think the request would be only because one of the bidders is here.
Okay.
So if you're willing to do that, kind of the first thing on commissioner business.
Okay. Well, the agenda will be approved as amended. Constituent time, is there anybody in the room that would like to address the board at this time? Doesn't look like anybody on the computer. Okay. We'll go ahead with County Clerk Terry Stevenson.
Commissioners, I have the minutes for the December 10th, 2024 BOCC regular meeting. Are there any additions, changes, or deletion?
Not here.
I have nothing.
I also have a liquor license renewal for a beer and wine license for Zen Gardens LLC located at 12498 3790 Road in Paonia. I've received all the necessary documentation and fees for this. Therefore, I would recommend approval of this renewal.
I'll move the board approve the renewal of a beer and wine license for Zen Gardens LLC located at 12498 3790 Road, Paonia, Colorado.
I'll second the motion.
Motion is second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, first up, we'll go ahead with the mobile home transaction.
Commissioners, if you remember, the purchase of the property down by the fairgrounds came with a 1994 mobile and an old derelict house. The county did put out for sealed bid purchase of the mobile home. Mr. Andy Crawford was with us today, was the successful bidder for a bid of $5,075. I would move that the county accept this bid and authorize the chair to sign the title.
I'll second that.
Motion is second on the floor. Any further discussion?
Just so you know, Chairman, Mr. Crawford is here present today. I have the title here ready for you to sign, and Mr. Crawford had actually just handed me a check in the amount of $5,075 made out to Delta County.
Okay, thank you.
Can we trust that it's good?
Of course.
I figure ones to her all that.
Okay, thank you. Motion is second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done. Thank you very much. And I'll sign the title.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
I did.
Okay, where do you want me to start?
Seller signature. chair.
Okay.
I don't think I'll be driving the trailer house down the road. Well, maybe.
Thank you.
So.
Okay, we'll continue with commissioner business. Board's consideration of certification of all mill levies submitted to Delta County from property taxing entities to the state of Colorado.
So I want to thank Jolene and Leona. Not only do they have to wrangle all the districts, they also have to make sure that Delta County is in order. So I appreciate Jolene and Leona significantly. Put it over to the two of them for the certification of levies and mills.
So I have before you the resolution first, the 2-page resolution. For the levying of the property taxes for the year 2024 in fiscal year 2020.
Questions on this one, Don?
Nope, I just, wanted to, make sure everybody realized it's, 15.48 mils. So there is a refund still, even with, all the changes and everything that's taken place with the legislature and the way taxes are now figured and done. Once again, thank Jolene. I know it's been a lot of hurdles to jump and fired hoops to jump through to figure all this out, but thank you so much. And thank you, Leona, for all your hard work on this, so.
Thank you.
We have a very professional staff here and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys. You distill it into something that's understandable for me and others.
Yes.
That's not easy to do.
So since my math in my head isn't that good, it is a 2.577 refund in mill levies, so.
Okay, thank you.
Which resolution is this? I'll move the board approve and authorize signature for resolution number 2024 R029, the levying of property taxes for the year 2024 for the County of Delta, State of Colorado fiscal year 2025. Total mill levy amount is 15.48 mils.
A second?
Motion is second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done.
Okay, and along, keeping with the mill levy, then you all have in front of you the certification of levies and revenue. Again, this is consideration and the chairman to sign for all of the districts that receive mill in the county of Delta.
It's on the second page.
I will move that the board, approve and authorize the chairman to sign the certification of levies and revenues by the Delta County Commissioners for the budget year 2025.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done. Thank you very much for all your hard work. A lot of numbers to be considered and percentages and decimal points.
It's got to be 3 according to Jolene over and over.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Next up, we have board's consideration of award of bid for 2024 RFP-04 newspaper of record.
Maybe slide, but it's a different thing. It's RFQ 04.
Okay.
Does it say differently?
Here.
RFQ4.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robbie. I would just like to briefly present the consideration of award of the bid of 2024 RFQ 04 for the newspaper of record. This RFQ required the services that the vendor would be required to provide legal advertisement for all Delta County legal notices, treasurer deed publications, and county semi-annual financial statement and requests for proposal. Additional publications may be required from various county departments through the year. Legal advertisements must be accepted by the vendor for various Delta County departments. There were 2 bids received by the December 5th deadline. I believe you received copies of both of those. The 1-page response received from Delta County Independent was considered unresponsive since they did not comply with the requested information. The second is from the High Country Shopper Spotlight. And based on the information received from the High Country Shopper Spotlight, there's a weekly publication. We will reach more readers through physical distribution and e-versions. Their only outsourcing is their printing. So we'll have 100% local contact. And since the pricing is governed by state statute, there will be no change in pricing.
Thank you. Any comments?
So the Delta County Independent, they didn't complete what was lacking?
The only response they sent was a subscription breakdown of what it was to have a subscription with them. It didn't comply with anything required in the RFQ. They answered none of the questions, sent none of the statistics.
Commissioner, you would have that in your packet.
I seen the thing, but it didn't make sense. It was just a separate item in the packet. It didn't necessarily explain.
Yeah, that was all they sent.
Okay, all right, yeah, it didn't explain in the packet that
Okay.
was what it was. So now, yeah. Okay.
It's disappointing that that's all they provided. Hang on.
This has been a question now for a year of how to handle this. You know, we've kicked this around a couple times questioning. You got a lot of history with the DCI. You know, you've got a lot of print, a lot of circulation with the High Country Shopper, no doubt. You know, can you train the people that actually look for that to go to another paper for that paper of record?
But the High Country Shopper put the work into meeting the requirements of the
Right.
RFQ. And they've been very responsive.
No, I don't disagree with that. Like I said, I'm just disappointed and just a lot of history that, you know, but history changes, so.
I'm gonna make the motion that the board approve a High Country Shopper for 2024 RFQ 04 newspaper of record.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion?
Just a quick clarification, did you put on there for a certain set of time? Is this in the RFQ or?
No.
Okay. Do you want that included in your motion?
That's a good idea. I think we ought to do this for 1 year and reevaluate.
I will agree with that amendment.
We did have talks about that, John, did you want to?
Well, if that's the will of the board, that's fine. I think that there was a team that got pulled together, including Lindsay and Lisa, myself and Terry as well. this is a little, I mean, it's a little bit of work, to put this out, and if the board wants us to put it back out next October or something like that, then that's perfectly fine. I think that the concept that we had discussed as a, kind of an ad hoc, committee looking at this, perhaps 2 to 3 years, but whatever the board wants to do.
If we're still seeing good and appropriate service within October of 2025, I don't think we need to rebid it. I'm just saying, let's evaluate the service, make sure we're getting to the readers and getting the reception from the public.
Reevaluate, but don't know I don't know where you're at procedurally, but, if the motion was amended to put it back out in a year.
And I said
maybe
reevaluate, not.
He said
you're saying
reevaluate.
Reevaluate, gotcha, okay. That's very good.
Okay, the motion will be amended to reevaluate in 1 year on this. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done.
Thank you guys for your hard work on this.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So,
Next up is to ratify the warrants.
you missed.
No, we got number 3.
I'm sorry. Number 3, board consideration, discussion, and approval for the purchase of the old Delta Police Department building using the 2024 funds.
So, as you will remember in recent past, we sold our old work release building to the city of Delta. This is, over there off of Fifth Street on the other side of the bypass. The city has plans to, utilize that space for a homeless facility. And, you know, at the time we talked to, the city about, you know, they would like to sell us the police department when they had got their project done. So they got the appraisal done. The appraisal came in at $415,000 for that property. It's about 4,159 square feet. The reason that we've talked about this property for quite a little while is we have a probation department that is state employees, but the county is required to house probation. They are spread out over the campus quite a little bit right now. When we built the Human Services building, we actually added extra office space for them to give them some room for growth. And the state has already put more people in, and they have outgrown that space. The police department building with minimal work would be set up to basically to take in the same kind of service that they do now with a front window, access components that they would need for safety. And it would be visible enough that it wouldn't be hard to find. The other thing that we've talked about is the possibility of putting our criminal justice folks, our pretrial folks in that building also, and trying to keep all of that criminal justice pretrial parole, you know, a one-stop shop type thing. So.
Yeah, useful public service.
Useful public service, yes. So that was the thought, and it might avoid some headaches in the courts when they can just say, go to the old police department. Most people will know where that's at versus trying to explain our current campus locations. You know, we've got space that parole's at over there now, that probation's are now. Robbie and I were talking, you know, we've talked for a number of years about maybe trying to set up some type of a daycare facility here on campus for especially our human services folks that are needing daycare. And with the way that's set up, with a little bit of fencing to that outside yard, that might be a great location for daycare. So there's a lot of possibilities here, how we do it. I think the 415, I really didn't think it was gonna come in there, but this is done by a certified appraiser. I expected it to be probably about around the 380 range is what I expected, but it is 4,000 square feet, so.
Pretty good condition. Any real upgrades to physical plant?
You know, the actual physical part of the building's in pretty good shape. It needs, you know, it needs a little love, a little TLC, but for the most part, it's in good shape. I mean, technically, you could move in, you know, within a month with a few little details and have it ready to go. But yeah, minimal cost to get it where you need it for whoever's gonna use it.
And with the state, with putting more employees, you gotta have a room for them, safety for the public, safety for the employees, and safety for the people that use it. They're again kind of a unfunded mandate, but that's the way the world is.
We've taken some of what was court space and used it for elections. So the courts are squawking a little bit about losing their space. So if we can move probation into a consolidated facility, the courts could get some office space back, which would help them. So, yeah, it's a never-ending battle, so.
This will put us over the allocation for capital. However, we can accommodate with a supplemental resolution at the January 7th meeting.
Well, then I'll move that the board purchase the property at 215 West Fifth Street in Delta, from the city of Delta, for the amount of $415,000.
I'll second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any
Uh,
further discussion?
Just amendment to that motion that it will use 2024 funds for this purchase.
That works.
Motion will be seconded as amended. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done. Thank you. Now ratify the warrants.
I'm going to move the board approve the expenditures from the various funds paid by warrants number 152818 through 153113 and ACH transactions 901 through 930 from November 1st, 2024 through November 30th, 2024, totaling $3,031,707.48 in accounts payable and $1,778,328.81 in monthly County Human Services and Health Department November 2024 payroll for items budgeted and approved per Delta County policy.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done. Thank you. Next on the agenda is review of the VOCC schedule with Lindsay.
Today we have, after this, the 1:30 to 30 bridge work session. 12 to 3 at WVWUA Task Force Meeting number 8. It's a hybrid meeting. 3:30 to 5 is Board of Health here at 560 Dodge Street. Tuesday, December 24th, it's public notice. The administrative offices for Delta County will be closing early at 12 p.m. for the rest of the day. December 25th, all administrative offices for Delta County will be closed for the Christmas holiday. Wednesday, January 1st, the administrative offices will be closed for New Year's Day. Thursday, January 2nd, 8:30 to 9:30, there is an AGNC legislative call. Tuesday, January 7th is our next BOCC, Board of Commissioners regular scheduled board meeting. That's at 8:30 here at 560 Street. Also at 6 p.m. that day is the Republican Party meeting at Service Church in Boston. Tuesday, January 14th, 8 to 8:30, we have the swearing in for Commissioner-elect Fuller and Commissioner Coons. It'll be at the Delta County Courthouse. Tuesday, January 1st is another Board of County Commissioners regular scheduled meeting, 8:30 to 12:30 here at 560 Dodge Street. 1:30 to 3:30 that day is a work session for Ridge. 3:30 to 5 that day is Board of Health at 560 Dodge Street. This day, am I good?
That's probably good.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Next up, we have the jail reports. Monday, December 9th, 2024, the Delta County Detention Facility Population Count Report. Male inmates, County Jail 32, female inmates, County Jail 7, male inmates, Department of Corrections 3, female inmates, Department of Corrections 2, for a total of 44. The average daily inmate population for the week of December 2nd, 24 through December 9th, 24 was 50.03. For Monday, December 16th, the Delta County Detention Facility Population Count Report. Male inmates, County Jail 34, female inmates, County Jail 6, male inmates, Department of Corrections 4, female inmates, Department of Corrections 2, for a total of 46. Average daily inmate population for the week of 12/9/24 through 12/16/24 was 52.17. Now, back to our agenda. Are we close enough to 9 o'clock?
You're the
To
chair.
continue. We got 4 minutes until 9 o'clock, but I think everybody's here. We will go ahead with the Colorado River District Annual Update. General Manager Andy Mueller, Director of Governmental Affairs Zane Kessler, and Delta County Director for the River District, Mark Rober, were here to give us a whole bunch of wisdom and information.
Well, you set high expectations here.
Yeah.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I hate to disappoint, we do our best. I want to start out by just saying our Government Affairs Director had a family emergency last night and is unable to be here today, and I apologize for that, but I have Mark Rover with me, so we should be just fine.
Sounds good.
Want to, we at the River District, we do our best to try to check in formally with our county commissioners in all 15 counties at least once a year. We know you're very busy, and we tend to be pretty busy too, but it is important to maintain our close relationship and really understand the needs of the county which we serve and your population, which are our joint constituents. I have the pleasure of seeing a number of you at different meetings throughout the year, and I appreciate that. I do think that Commissioner Kuntz goes above and beyond by chairing a roundtable. Some people might think that's akin to a prison sentence, but I think it's his chairing that body has really reinvigorated the roundtable in the Gunnison Basin, and it's doing some amazing work. So I appreciate that. I want to just, the true reason we're here is to hear from you and hear what we can do better. But I want to start out by thanking you for appointing Mr. Rover here as your representative to our board. Our board is, well, I like to think of it as one of the most functional governmental boards in the state. We have a very politically diverse 15 counties, and yet our county representatives work incredibly well together to protect West Slope water, and they do so in a way, in a manner that I think is really quite respectable and should be modeled in other forums in our society these days. If the General Assembly could actually take a little hint, they might get work done. So I do think our our board is a really good one. Mr. Rober, really does an amazing job representing Delta County. He isn't our director who talks the most, but when he talks, he is absolutely impactful, and we appreciate that. So, Mark, I don't know if you had anything to add. I was gonna talk some about what we're up to.
No, I really don't have much to add. Andy pretty much said it all. I don't know so much about all the accolades from me, but I do my best, and you know, I talk with you guys periodically, mostly Wendell, because I see him at Roundtable and other things to do with water. But I just want to let you know that, you know, if you guys do expect something more than what I'm doing, let me know. Because there's times I feel like maybe we should be in closer contact, but I try and do my best to represent the whole county. And with the amount of projects that we've gotten through, Andy's going to give them to you, I think, but I'm pretty proud of our work in the River District. Our River District staff, Andy and his staff, do an amazing job. I couldn't say, you know, I couldn't be more pleased with what they get done. And West Slope Water is always at the forefront of what they work for. And of course, this past year they had the big one with the Shoshone, and I think that is real protection for our West Slope agriculture, is securing those rights. So I think that's a big win for, if we get it over the finish line, it's a big win for the River District. But with that, I'm going to turn it back to Andy, and he can go through details.
So Mark, I'm gonna take that as you're volunteering to serve for another 3 years.
I would be more than happy to do that here, you guys, so be so fit. So,
We'll take care of that in January.
okay. I enjoy the work I'm doing.
That's excellent news, and our statute's a weird one. It prescribes that the counties must appoint their member at their first meeting in January. And then your representative shows up at our first quarterly meeting, the third Tuesday of January. So it's not a quick lead time, but as long as that works for your schedule, we appreciate it. And we did send the paperwork, I think, just last week, so hopefully you have that. I wanted to talk a little bit, as you'll recall, back in 2020, the district board went to the voters and asked for a tax increase. And this county, as well as the 13 of the other counties of our 15 counties, endorsed that ballot measure. It passed resoundingly, and the voters, in the midst of the economic uncertainty of the pandemic, voted to almost double our tax base. And I think a lot of governments and a lot of people are, you know, would wonder what a little district like the River District would do with that additional revenue. And, you know, we had a very detailed fiscal plan to explain to our voters and to you, our elected officials, what we would do. And I think it's important each year for us to come back and report to you and the people of Delta County to make sure that we're doing our job with that money. And so what we did at the district after that passed is what we said we would, and we set up something called the Community Funding Partnership. It's a program where we put and committed in the ballot measure to put a minimum of $4.2 million a year into a fund to sponsor and grant money to projects. But it's not just the finances that we grant. We also engage with our technical resources, our grant. We have a team of two employees that specialize in helping our water users find additional matching funds and leveraging the local funding that we have into bigger projects. To date, we've sponsored throughout the district over 115 projects since that November of 2020 election. And we have spent or committed, in those projects, roughly $20.5 million. We have leveraged into our district over $96 million of outside funding that otherwise would not have been brought into the area. And it's a really important piece. And what we're able to do is create a seat at the table for our water users and our community's priorities and create and drive those priorities. So it may be in Delta County, I will just say that you are often at the top of the list of the counties that receive money from our program. And to date, we have sponsored 25 of those 120 projects are here in Delta County. We have committed just over $2 million in this county. A lot of it has to do with diversion and ditch rehabilitation, kind of meeting multi-purpose benefits. A large driver for us, while they're all multi-purpose projects, is keeping productive ag in production. It is absolutely imperative from our district's perspective that the economic health of Western Colorado depends upon a healthy agricultural economy. It is an economy that is threatened by all sorts of things outside of water, but a whole lot of things in water. And so in our job, both, as you may recall, we have a dual charge at the River District, is to protect, develop, and conserve our water resources for the population that we represent, but also to represent the state of Colorado and help the state defend our entitlement under the Colorado River Compact. So the threats to Western Colorado come from both of those. They come from the Front Range and urban development, and they also come from downriver where there is an insatiable desire to take more water and always high level of interest in the lower basin as to how they can affect more water transfers from the upper basin down to the lower basin. So we're a very busy little organization. We have 25 employees and cover roughly 28% of the state, but we also, a small team of us are involved in the federal and interstate issues on a fairly constant basis. So I end up, myself and several other team members end up traveling quite a bit in that arena. It is a really something we're really proud of, that I think our relatively small population within our district, there's about 500,000 people. We have a voice and an ability to influence policy far beyond the borders of our district. It's because of the faith of the voters. It's because our board is able to speak with one voice. We don't get to do that if we're divided in Western Colorado on water issues, we will get run over. And so it's really important to have that unity. Here in the county, we've sponsored, just getting back to that real quick, most recently, projects you may be familiar with, the Fruitland Irrigation Company SCADA Improvements Project. We committed $50,000 to that. The Delta Mesa Colorado Master Irrigator Program, that was another approximately $50,000. The Grand Mesa Wildfire Ready Watersheds Plan, that's trying to help the urban interface up on the Grand Mesa and the homes and important water resources up there. The Ryan Reservoir Outlet Rehabilitation Program project, and then the Gunnison River Basin Drought Resiliency and Restoration. So there's quite a bit here. I think there are a number of projects coming through the pipeline from Delta as well. It actually, the Shoshone project was mentioned, and I'll get into that in a minute because I do think it's important for the entire West Slope. But because we've committed a large amount of funds in that Shoshone project, and we expect to expend those funds by 2027, we have directed our staff that run the community funding partnership to make sure that we equalize funding throughout our basin. So the main stem of the Colorado is getting a large chunk of money on one project. That means we need to, make sure we fund good projects here in the Gunnison Basin and over in the Yampa White Basin. And that's where we're focusing a lot of our efforts, last year, this year, and in a couple years to come. So it's a good opportunity, I think, for Delta to really look around and see what projects we can implement that really help our producers stay in production. You know, we also are doing work, that impact members, or some of the population here in Delta County, and that has to do with the, our urban water use, and that is the Tri-County Water Conservancy District's effort to create a redundant water supply up on the Uncompahgre. In the event that something were to happen to the Gunnison Tunnel, this whole valley has a great vulnerability, and so we've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort, money, trying to help Tri-County develop that alternative treatment plan or alternate treatment plan. So it's not just ag, it has to do with urban and industrial users here too. We're really interested in making sure that what we're doing is what you want, as Mark said. You know, how do we make sure we're helping the county? I want to talk about Shoshone. You know, a year ago, we finished 20 years of negotiations with Xcel Energy and signed a contract to buy the water rights associated with that little power plant in the middle of Glenwood Canyon. And I've heard from some folk in the Gunnison Basin and the Yampa White that, you know, that's great you're doing that, and it matters to the people on the main stem of the Colorado, but it doesn't necessarily help us. I just want to explain a couple things about why that project is important to the whole West Slope, and even outside of our district in the southwestern area of the state. What we're doing there is taking some of the most senior non-consumptive water rights on the main stem of the Colorado. And because the power plant is threatened by geologic instability and age, federal regulatory environment, we don't believe that plant is going to continue to function much into the future. So we're buying the water rights and turning them into an in-stream flow. It's the only other non-consumptive water right that runs year round. That we had to go with that one. It means that we are partners with the state of Colorado, because the Colorado Water Conservation Board is the only entity under our state statutes that can hold those in-stream flows. So we have been working with state agency long before we signed the contract, but in this past year, quite a bit. We expect to be in front of their board in May, initiating that in-stream flow agreement process. After we go through that process, we then go through a change case in the water court. Following that, we would go to the Public Utilities Commission, or Xcel would do that. We would accompany them. They have to get permission to sell that asset and determine where the benefits or the proceeds on sale go. After that, we'll close on this $99 million deal. We have, as you might have read in the paper, raised quite a bit of money. Both our district, the state of Colorado each committed $20 million to the deal. I do want to point out that the state legislature approving that project's bill was nearly unanimous. I think there were 2 votes in the House against it, but otherwise every other vote in the state was for it, which is remarkable given the intent of the project, right? Preserving West Slope water is not without controversy because what are we preserving it from? Well, if that Shoshone right goes away, those Front Range entities get to just pick up more water. They stay in priority longer. Their portals up in the headwaters of the main stem of the Colorado and its tributaries, they just take more water without being subject to call. That helps the main stem of the river. Looking out into the future, should we, we being the upper basin, find ourselves potentially in violation of the compact? It means that the Colorado River Compact signed in 1922 indicates that any rights that were not put to use before 1922, post-compact water, is subject to curtailment if we are not meeting our obligations under that compact. I want to be really clear to you and any public that are listening. our state and the upper basin have always met the compact obligations. The problem is that that it is getting drier, it is getting hotter, and we are seeing a decline in the river flows, which has indicated and watching the deliveries where they're counted down to the lower basin just below the Glen Canyon Dam. There's a reasonably foreseeable future that we will be violating our compact obligation, or at least the lower basin's interpretation of our compact obligation sometime in the next 4 to 10 years. And that all depends on hydrology, right? If the hydrology turns around, we'll be fine. But it's a rolling 10-year average obligation down at Lee Ferry. And why that matters to us and why Shoshone comes into it is that if in fact we've been deemed by the Supreme Court of the United States or even the Upper Colorado River Commission that we are in violation of that compact, the UCRC or the Supreme Court orders our state engineer to curtail water rights in order to make up the deficit. That and many people look at that and say, well, that's fine because most of the pre-compact water is over here in agriculture on the west slope. Post-compact water is significantly over on the Front Range. And in fact, they divert on average about 550,000 acre feet a year at the headwaters of the Colorado from the river for their growing population. And 98% of that 550,000 is post-compact. So it all developed after 1922. Problem is that the courts and our legislature are unlikely to deprive large urban populations of water in their drinking water and their fire hydrants and their hospitals. They need that water from somewhere. They're gonna have to take some of it out of the Colorado River. What we don't want is for them to be able to take it all and keep their part of the state in water for their golf courses and their lawns and even their agriculture that depends on it at the expense of our ag. So what happens today, if you think about it in water on any given stream, if the stream is short of water, just like the Uncompahgre or the Gunnison are, and you have a junior right and you want to make sure that right runs year round because you're a city, you go out and you create what's called an augmentation plant. You get a substitute supply of water out of a reservoir or some other creative solution, when your water right would be under call from a senior right, you put more water in the river so that the senior user gets satisfied, but you keep taking your water. Well, expand that into an interstate arena. We don't know what the rules are in a compact curtailment because our states never put them together. The state engineer is charged with it. You may have heard me call for the state engineer to start that process and get those rules in place. It's not because I like rules. It's not because I want more regulations on our water users. It's because we don't have any certainty right now. Our water users' future is not foreseeable. We can't plan for it if we don't know what the rules of the game are. And so what am I concerned about? I'm concerned about rules that will allow the Front Range with junior rights to come over and dry up the pre-compact water in agriculture on the west slope, everywhere, anywhere. Again, now they don't have to build a new tunnel and divert that water over to Denver. They just have to send it downstream to the senior right down to Lake Powell while they take their junior right out. That's a problem and it's foreseeable. We've got several strategies we are working on at the district to help prevent that from happening. We've been working on them for years. One of those strategies is Shoshone, and that has to do with how exchanges work generally in the state of Colorado. If your junior right is up here at the Trans Mountain diversions up in the high mountains, and your pre-compact water is, say, down in the Grand Valley, or in the Uncompahgre Valley, or in the Yampa Valley, in order to dry up that water, those fields, and send the water downstream, you have to actually be able to exchange it up to the portal. You have to say, well, we're gonna take those molecules and we're gonna, and they can do that unless in the middle of the Colorado River, there's a senior water right that calls them out and prevents them from doing that. That's Shoshone, right? So we don't want to see them being able to exchange all the way up unless the West Slope has a big seat at that negotiating table to make sure that we're protecting the interests of the West Slope. We're not saying that we're going to deprive the Front Range of its public, health, safety, and welfare. But what we are saying is our communities have value. Our agriculture is the lifeblood of our communities, and we are going to do everything we can to keep that alive. And we need to create those seats at the table for the West Slope so that when that occurs, we have good leverage and good bargaining position. And that's what Shoshone really is about from a West Slope wide perspective. And Wendell, I'm sorry if I'm boring you because I know you know this stuff, but I think
Everybody needs to hear.
I think it's really important to understand that it's just this little tiny power plant stuck in Glenwood Canyon, but it really makes a difference on all of our basins. And here in Delta County, I think it makes a huge difference. You all have a really remarkable thriving agriculture, between the Uncompahgre Valley and the North Fork, and the Surface Creek area. It's just incredible. And I just want to say, please keep your agriculture in production because I love eating your food. Let's work together to do that. So I think that's what we're up to on Shoshone. It's a complex issue. So if there are questions or concerns, I'd like to just pause there, maybe stop talking so much.
I had a question, Andy.
Yeah.
On the raising the funds, I know, was it 40 million coming from ARPA?
We have sought $40 million. It's actually the Inflation Reduction Act.
All right, okay.
Rather partisan act of Congress that went through on a strict party line. And we've requested $40 million from the Bureau of Reclamation. They have funds appropriated to them for projects just like Shoshone. In fact, I can tell you that we worked very closely with our Senate delegation to get that language in the bill when it was going through with Shoshone in mind. And I think what you're getting at is it may not be there here.
How do we help get this across the finish line?
So we're working with the current administration. In fact, this afternoon, I have a meeting with another agency, another office in the White House. We're trying to get them to move. They may not get that money out. So and I'm, by the way, I want to be real clear. I don't play party politics. So this is not a partisan issue from our perspective. Shoshone is supported by every color of political stripe, and it is important to keep it that way. Sound federal investments in durable solutions on the Colorado River are what any administration should be investing in. So this isn't, we're not playing games on one side or the other of the aisle. The money's there, it's lawfully appropriated, it was intended for projects like this. They should issue it and grant it. There is some concern that the incoming administration, because of the way that act was pushed through, it was a single partisan, party act. They may claw that money back and want to invest it in priorities for the new administration. I don't have any opinion on that other than to the extent that it harms the Colorado River. I'd rather not see that. So one of the things we may be working and asking you to help us with is if we don't see that money become obligated before January 20th, we've already been in touch with our new congressional representative in the House. And we are working closely with him and others in Western Water who will be in the majority party to make sure that when a clawback occurs, that it's surgical, that it protects projects that make sense like this one and not all of the money. There's a lot of money in there that is not something that the majority of Americans would agree to spend money on. So I understand the desire to claw it back. The Colorado River money, and specifically this money for durable solutions like Shoshone, is something we absolutely need. And so we might be calling on you to help us with Congressman Hurd and and others to try to help cobble together a little bit of a maneuver in the House to keep that money alive. That's where we're headed.
I would support that, and I think Delta County would too, and even the roundtable, let us know what we can do to help you there.
I appreciate that. I really do. And I want you to know that you're not gonna have to twist Congressman Hurd's arm. He's 100% on board. He is a freshman representative, so it might be a little challenging, but I think we can work with him and help us. So that we will be in touch, trust me. Yeah.
Very good.
But we're constantly working on this stuff. It is amazing. It is, I mean, just as you all know, I think there are some very well-intentioned people in the federal government agencies. It just has been frustrating to see the pace with which they've operated to get money committed.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
I had another question for you, though. Reclamation came out with 5 alternatives on the post-26 operations. Have you guys done any analysis on that you could share with us?
Yeah, we have looked at those alternative. I want to say, and Wendell, again, you probably know this, but the post-26 operating guidelines for Lake Powell and Lake Mead are what's in the news all the time, right? What are those operating guidelines? The guidelines are required under an act of Congress that was passed in 1968. All right, it's actually the act that funded the Ridgeway Reservoir, Crawford, some of that, the Conservancy District up there, some others, I believe in this county as well, were funded by that 1968 act. Also funded the Central Arizona project, unfortunately. So that is part of why they need so much water down. Basically, the act said, look, these 2 reservoirs, Powell and Mead, need to be operated in a coordinated fashion, and it has a section in the act that tells you what they mean by that. Congress meant by that. The guidelines first came out in the early 70s after that act was passed in 68. They were called the long range operating criteria. And those worked up until about 2007. But because they were interpreted to have what's called a minimum presumptive release out of Lake Powell at 8.23 million acre feet a year, they weren't working by the time 2007 hit, because we'd seen an incredible drought from 2000 to 2007. So there's not 8.23 million acre feet every year going into Lake Powell. And if you continue to release that much, you're going to end up with an empty Lake Powell, which is what happened, right? And between 2000 and 2020. So 2007, they came up with these interim guidelines. They thought they covered a broad spectrum of wet and dry years. Turns out they were way off on the low end, the dry years. They didn't have that plan right. Those guidelines by themselves expire in 2026. The key about those guidelines is that it's actually guidelines that are put out by the Department of Interior. They can adopt them as regulations and on their own, and they can impose them on the basin, and they can make it work because they happen to own both of those reservoirs. The Bureau of Reclamation has never operated that way in the Colorado River Basin. They want and prefer 7-state consensus on the way those reservoirs are operated. That's what happened in 2007. That's what they're shooting for. So these 5 alternatives as to how they might operate it are the Bureau's attempt to tell the 7 states, hurry up and make an agreement. Because if you don't, any one of these 5 alternatives is going to hurt one of you, both of you, or none of them are going to be really good. And that's really what those alternatives do. And the business as usual, the no action alternative, right? They claim they're going to follow LROC and release 8.23 million acre feet a year. The water's not there. They would crash Lake Powell and damage their own infrastructure. They've acknowledged that they're not gonna do that, even though it's an alternative that they put in their own analysis. The other four are kind of a hybrid of proposals. The Lower Basin put one together last spring, the Upper Basin put one together. Neither the Upper or Lower Basin proposal really satisfy the needs of all parties, right? So the Upper Basin proposal is certainly from our perspective, a better proposal because it protects Lake Powell. And it keeps the levels of Lake Powell and even Lake Mead fuller, but there are costs to be paid for doing that, and those costs are all borne by water users in the Lower Basin. And while I think there's some justice to that, given their disproportionate amount of use in the Lower Basin, that's not how you strike a deal. Just to be clear about that, like that, to say, hey, this is the proposal that makes the most sense, you just need to cut your water use by as much as 4 million acre feet a year. And we'll keep using our water and we'll all be fine. You can understand why the other side of the negotiation doesn't like that. The Lower Basin says, well, we'll cut 1.5 million acre feet, which by the way is equivalent to their unaccounted for overuse, their evaporation and transit loss that they've never ever accounted for. So I guess they deserve kudos for doing that. They should have done that 20 years ago and we wouldn't be in this crisis. But they're offering to do it now, we think. But then they say, but anything above that, we split equally. The cuts beyond that come from the Lower Basin and the Upper Basin equally. Well, number one, you can impose cuts, mandatory cuts in the Lower Basin, the federal government can, because all of the water users in the Lower Basin who depend on Colorado River water signed contracts with the Bureau of Reclamation that gave the federal government the authority to do that. That was part of the Boulder Canyon Projects Act back in 1929 that authorized the Hoover Dam. So the Lower Basin, in exchange for money, remember this is what happens a lot. You give up your sovereignty when you take money from the federal government. Well, that's what they did. Upper Basin, we've never done that. We run our own rivers. We run our own systems. So the federal government can impose mandatory cuts in the Lower Basin. The Lower Basin is proposing that the federal government impose mandatory cuts in the Upper Basin. Our Constitution doesn't allow our state to do that. And I want to tell you that our state actually agrees with my statement, which is nice because we could go have a battle over that too, but I don't think we're going to need to. Our state, I've talked to our Attorney General personally about this. I've talked to the governor's representatives. All of them understand that's not a power that the state has, nor do they want that power. And that's the key. So we can impose equal cuts on the Upper and Lower Basin, in addition to which, under our math, the state of Colorado's math, which I believe is correct, if you include the tributaries down the Lower Basin, they are using an average of 11.3 million acre feet a year. The compact gives them 8.5 million acre feet a year. Up here, we get 7.5 million acre feet a year. And we've never, ever used more than 5, and our average is closer to 4.5 million acre feet. And in some years, like 2020, we were down at 3.5 million acre feet because the water's just not there. So we already adjust our use. We adapt to hotter, drier times. They have not. So equal cuts doesn't make any sense to us up here. So we're kind of at this loggerhead. We're working through it. There are lots of conversations going on. I know you probably read in the paper that the commissioners from the 7 states didn't meet when they were together in Vegas. Well, they didn't. I got to meet with a couple of them from the Lower Basin and talk to them. They were talking on the side. They're not official meetings, but there are things going on. And frankly, I think there are solutions that hopefully reasonable people will find. Keep in mind, if the states don't find that solution and come up with a consensus, the federal government's going to impose something. They're not going to take that no action alternative because it will destroy the Glen Canyon Dam, and they're not going to do that. So I feel pretty good about it. Honestly, I know that probably most people won't say that out loud, but it's a negotiation, and you got to have a backbone when you're negotiating, and that's what our state's doing. So,
Thank you.
all right. I'm actually really interested in things we can do to help Delta County more. And are there areas of need that you can identify things? Wendell, I know you deal with our staff a lot more than others. What can we do better? Because as much as I think we're doing a great job, I know we can always do.
The grant monies through the community funding partnership really help these local entities on their aging infrastructure, because often that's the seed money for them to get to the next round of grant. It's amazing how exponentially costly these programs are. I think the farmer's ditch on the Campbell property is $4.5 million now for that diversion repair. So I appreciate you guys doing that and just keeping us abreast of what's going on with the post-26, so that we can reach out to our legislators too.
Right.
That helps us. We can't do it all, and you guys are experts there.
I appreciate that. I will say, I mean, that's what your predecessors intended when they set us up in 1937.
Yep.
I mean, that was the idea, like have a body that pays attention to that really closely, develops the expertise. You touched on something else, and I wanted to touch on it in the post-2026 world. One of the issues, there's been a lot of controversy about these demand management, system conservation pilot program. Last year, there was some legislation, or 2 years ago, maybe legislation that was floating around that would have created a strategic water reserve for the state with Colorado River water. Those are all programs that are really what I lump into one group, which is called a conserved consumptive use program. It is a program that pays water users temporarily or permanently to reduce their use, and uses the reduction in consumptive use to put water in the river and meet our obligations downstream. Our state, along with the other 3 upper basin states, committed in their offer last spring to have a parallel activity of a conserved consumptive use program. They don't know what it looks like. They're not guaranteeing any amount, but they're saying they're going to keep doing this. Those programs are very expensive. They depend on federal money that may or may not be there. That's one issue that we can all foresee happening. 2, our district has done a lot of work out of concern that the easiest way to do those programs is take all of the water out of the West Slope. And remember, by protecting our state's interest in the Colorado River, by adding some water to the river, you're protecting all the water users on the Front Range who ought to have skin in the game too. And we believe that every water user sector, whether it's municipal, industrial, or ag, if there's going to be a program, they need to contribute to that proportionately to their use. And we think that the Front Range needs to contribute their water proportionately to their use. The System Conservation Pilot Program, which is going on right now, finishing up its 2nd formal year, may or may not be reauthorized here in the next 5 days of Congress, is the federal government sponsoring a program by the Upper Colorado River Commission, which is our 4 states and the Upper Basin together, to pay farmers, many of them here in the Uncompahgre Valley, to not use their water and get paid in exchange for that. I think that tool for a farmer, from a farmer's perspective, is great to have that ability to exercise that water right in a way where you can monetize your water right on a temporary basis. So it's not a bad concept, but if you allow it to go unfettered, you set up a federally funded market to meet a public need and a public obligation, and you're establishing a whole new public policy to do this, you better be careful and study it really closely and make sure you avoid unintended harm. And that unintended harm is, from our perspective, the destruction of our West Slope agricultural community. Take System Conservation Pilot Project. Last 2 years, there hasn't been a lot of water, but there's 16,000 acre feet in the first year out of the West Slope, out of the state of Colorado, all of it out of the West Slope. Last year, or this water year, or last water year, but the calendar year of 2024, they got 39,000 acre feet of water contributed or paid for. Where it went, we're not sure, but they paid for it. All of it from Western Colorado, all of it from ag. They're talking about scaling that program up in this negotiation. There's a point where our Western Colorado agricultural economy cannot handle it, where our school districts and our fire protection districts and our library districts and our county road and bridge funds won't be able to sustain the reduction in agricultural benefit. Our Main Street businesses won't have the business that they need to stay open. The labor market that all of our producers depend on, the migrant labor market, will no longer be as robust because they won't be here because the important mass quantity, you know, that essential amount of work won't be around. So we've done economic studies, sociopolitical studies. We've been engaged in we've set up stakeholder groups, and we've created potential rules that a market might work. We provided that to the state, to the federal government, to the UCRC. So far, we don't have any buyers on that stuff, and we need to push hard as a united West Lobe to prevent that from happening. And all we're asking for in modern parlance is a little bit of equity. We'd like them to the Front Range to have their equitable share of reduction in use. If our state needs to do it, if it's good for us, it's good for them. So that's just I will commit to keeping you all informed on that and where we may need some help from you to make sure that moves forward in the right way.
The biggest challenge, thank you, Andy, for bringing that up. The biggest challenge here is it's not just the dollar amount that single landowner receives for not farming that piece of ground. Like you said, I mean, there are so many compounding economic problems with this. You know, the corn crop out there, it's not just the amount that the farmer gets paid for that corn, it's everything it took to get that corn out of the ground into production on the road. That's the part that's got to be figured in here, and they're not even close when they start putting out dollars.
Right. I completely agree with you. And while I respect the owner of the water rights' ability to be paid for it, there are a whole bunch of other segments of our economy that aren't being compensated.
Right.
And that's the issue. And I will tell you, we've traveled down to the Palo Verde Irrigation District in California, where they 10 years ago, maybe more now, 15 years ago, entered into an agreement with Metropolitan Water of California, where they fallow up to 29% of their irrigated crops in exchange for payment so that the Met can get that water for LA and San Diego. And it's touted as a huge success. I would encourage you to go see Blythe, California. It's a town that reminds me a lot of Delta, except it's Delta looking like a zombie town. Okay, because it is the center of the Palo Verde Irrigation District, and there are farmers and ranchers who have made millions and millions of dollars from that program, and they're very happy with it. The other farmers who stayed in business because they want to work for a living are having a really hard time. They can't get their labor. They can't find their inputs locally. They got to go buy their fertilizer and their tractor repair and all that stuff are 100-mile drives now. I was bringing a tour of water users down there to look at some of that stuff in the lower basin, and I said, oh, this is easy. I'm going to get on their Chamber of Commerce and see if I can meet with their chamber so they can tell us how it's been economically. The members of the Chamber of Commerce were the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, the Central Arizona Project, an output out of Waltree called Renewable Water Resources, another one called Water Asset Management. There wasn't a single tractor store, hardware store, feed store. There wasn't a co-op to be seen. And I thought, well, this is the weirdest Chamber of Commerce I've ever seen. So I called Town Hall and I got their manager on the phone, and she said, oh, yeah, you need to talk to our vice mayor. So we talked to Joey was his name, and he's one of the farmers who stayed in. He goes, oh yeah, it's been absolutely devastating. I said, great, I'd like to come talk to you with a bunch of our leaders from Western Colorado, find this out. He said, great. So we met, we had 2 meetings. We were meeting with some of the farmers who were getting paid, and then we were gonna go over and meet with the city. And we met with them, and when the farmers who were getting paid heard we were gonna go meet with the people who aren't such a big fan of the program, they showed up and intimidated the guys. They stood and they interrupted the conversation, and they had some pretty nasty things to say about the guys who didn't like the program. It was very divisive, the program in their community. There are winners and there are losers, and the town's a loser. And that's the thing that I think we all have to keep in mind, like that. And so I would just encourage us all to make sure that that program, if it's gonna exist, we don't like any of them, just to be clear. Sometimes when you see the writing on the wall and you understand that something's gonna happen, the best defense is to make sure it gets employed correctly. And that's really where we are. So I hope that helps.
Perfect.
What happens when the farmer wants his water back?
Well, under certain programs, like the SCPP, it's temporary for 1 year at a time. So in our mind, that makes sense. We'd actually suggest that perhaps land shouldn't be fallowed for more than 2 years consecutively. Because if it's fallowed for much longer, it is unlikely to return to being ag. You know, that's the problem that we're trying to prevent, is that permanent reduction in ag. But those agreements down in the Palo Verde Irrigation District, they entered into 20-year agreements. And so my guess is most of that land won't ever come back. So, yeah.
And then you have return flows, and
Yeah.
like the Ocompagre Valley has a 7 use on all the water.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So it's a complex world, but it is one that we're working hard to make sure it works for Western Colorado.
I appreciate you guys' hard work. Mark, thank you for representing us there. I know it's takes a lot.
Thank you guys for letting me do that, because I do, I've learned a lot. I was on that tour that Andy talked about of the lower basin, and it's eye-opening. I mean, totally different perspective on how water is used, where it comes from, and trying to negotiate the meeting of minds there it's interesting, because they cannot grasp that, you know, we don't have that big reservoir to call on, and when it's not there, we don't have it.
A couple years ago at the meeting in Grand Junction, I was chatting with the representative from the Arizona Water Project. And, you know, and that was his comment. He says, everybody needs to give equally. I said, well, we don't have a choice. You know, and I still don't think he understood that concept, that it's not just a spigot open up for us.
They still don't understand, because you know, if you look in an average, I say an average dry year, if you look at our dry years, we have a reduction in use of about 30% of our water consumption in the upper basin as a whole, certainly within our state. Doesn't happen every year, because some years we can have dry years, but we do get by with consuming a little bit more water. But in those average years, we average dry years, we have 30% reduction. So if you really look at what the upper basin has proposed to the lower basin, we're just saying take up to 30% cuts in those dry years.
Right.
Try it,
Right.
because that's what we do.
Right.
So we're just asking you to take the same percentage cut.
Right.
And by the way, we don't even get paid for our water reductions. You guys get paid every time you want to reduce your water. And then you store it up in Lake Mead and you use it the next year. So I'm not really sure why you're getting paid for it. So that, you know.
And even our allocations, because of our 10-year rolling average.
Yeah.
You know, our allocations now on 100% year are not what they were 20 years ago on 100% year.
Correct.
And they don't understand that either.
Correct. No, and you know, to get a successful conclusion, right, you have to always understand what reality is on the other side of the table, the negotiating table. And it is hard. We've had the Central Arizona Project Board and Metropolitan Water of Southern California up here and toured them around the Gunnison to get them to understand water administration, water shortages, the types of crops. Because there's this whole theory that we actually don't even grow food up here.
Right.
And I mean, you know, I'm like, well, here it is. You know, and here's how we administer it. And we had Bob Erford, our division engineer, explaining how he curtails water when the M&D canal turns off. We're at the head gate of the M&D canal upstream. And they said, so you mean those farmers and ranchers upstream, they just, when they get curtailed, they just turn on their pumps and start pumping groundwater? I said, no, in our state, groundwater is connected to the surface. I said, it is in your state too, but legally you don't seem to recognize that, but that, you know, so, anyway. Well, is there anything else that I can?
I just want to echo, thank you guys for the community grant program. I know here on the Surface Creek side, you know, we got a lot of aging infrastructure on those reservoirs on the mesa. And it's been a lifesaver for a lot of those guys. So we've got to keep that moving because we start drying up those reservoirs, we're going to be in big trouble. So thank you so much for that. The only other thing I'd like to add is that, you know, if we can try to stay on the tree removal program, you know, the Russian olives, the Chinese elms, the tamarisks, we are losing so much water every year. And we got to try to come up with some outside the box thinking on how we take care of some of those issues. So, agreed.
Yes, thank you very much for the information. Appreciate it.
Well,
Appreciate your time.
Sure, I appreciate your interest and
Dave
willingness.
Mitchell's got a question if you want him to.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, Andy, I'm a realtor and we've met on project before, but in presenting to potential buyers and they're asking about the Fire Mountain, both on Compadre, you know, Ridgeway, are these named in those 5 alternatives that you were talking about as to what the worst case scenario might be?
They're not individually called out or named, it doesn't get that specific, so it really, those 5 alternatives deal with the bigger reservoirs, they do reach up in the Blue Mesa and, in this area, but they don't actually mention specifically Ridgeway or Fire Mountain. Or the Panhandle.
So what would we factually represent about the future of Fire Mountain?
Well,
And Ridgeway and Crawford that would not be alarmist? I mean, it'd be accurate, but not alarmist.
I'd say that, to be fair, the more senior your water rights are, the better off you're gonna be. That's always the case, as you know.
Yeah, but let's get specific because I'm dealing with somebody buying that property and they want to know.
Right, and I would say, I would encourage you to get them to hire specifically a water lawyer to give them advice on how reliable the products are. That's, I don't think we could get too specific. I would say, you know, any federal reservoir, whether it's Ridgeway, Fire Mountain, or Blue Mesa, does have some additional federal control, right? It's that whole idea that you take federal money and federal benefits, but you get some control from the feds. And so, if we were to see dry years far beyond what we've seen so far, I could see the federal government exercising its emergency authority to reduce the amount of water stored in those reservoirs. Now, in Paonia, as you know, that thing drains every year. So that Fire Mountain Canal, it's unlikely and it doesn't have a volume that would help in the system. And we're talking millions of acres. Yeah. So, but, you know, in Ridgeway, you know, I think there's 20,000 acre feet of uncontracted water in Ridgeway right now. Federal government doesn't want to enter into long-term contracts on that water because it's reserving the right to send it down to the lower basin. That's a disturbing fact for those of us in Western Colorado, right? So you're asking for, you know, what I would say, honestly, I don't think I can get specific because every property is different, every water rate's different. What I would tell you is that make sure your buyers understand that water in the West is a very complicated matter and that we are, in fact, seeing less water available. And so adaptation and innovation in water use by water users is the way that we're going to succeed. You don't get to keep doing the same thing we've always done and expect success, because with less water, we're going to have to adapt. And that's a lot of our community funding partnership is helping our water users adapt. Sorry, I can't get more specific.
No, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We'll take 5-minute break here, and then at 10 o'clock we'll come back with planning. And we are ready? Okay, 10 o'clock, have one item from planning. Turn it over to planning.
Just wanted to get the shared screen. And my computer being very slow. All right, so today, for you, we have PLN 23-103 vets. This is for a minor plat to accept the final plat subdividing approximately 73 acres, creating lot 1, which is going to be 67.972 acres, and lot 2 being 5.298 acres, with road dedication totaling in 1.0818 acres for Ute Trail Road and 0.125 acres for 2375 Road in Sea Ridge. So here, you should be able to see the proposed minor plat. The area in the green is the area that was previously dedicated in a previous plat. The dark area is the area to be dedicated on this plat. So that basically concludes the presentation. The Betzes are here. The reason why we are here or presenting this application to you is because the Betts were contesting the road right away. And I don't know if we still are or are not contesting anymore, so.
Well, again, I think it's.
If you
good.
could identify yourself for the
Yeah,
record.
I'm
please.
Chris Betts, B-E-T-Z. This is my parents, Todd and Jeff, the owners of the property. My wife and I are looking at taking on the 5 acres to be subdivided. Answer your question, you know, we tried to get some information over the past year because our surveyor had said that there have been instances in the past where you didn't necessarily need to take the entire right of way. And we've been told by various folks in the county that Ute Trail being categorized as a minor arterial, no one disagreed that didn't make sense, you know, having a 100-foot right of way. Since then, I've pulled up the history, and generally it looks like you guys are taking the full right of way pretty much most of the time, except for unique situations where maybe the road was on someone's property, like on, you know, Ward Lake Trail. But so no, long answer to your short question, no, we're not contesting it. But, you know, we originally told we didn't need to be here on last Thursday, but it'd be nice if y'all had any questions. And so we're available if you got any questions or what have you, but no.
I have no questions. Pretty simple plat here, honestly, and logical conclusion here, so.
Well, can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I used to work for a world-class company. I was a director on a program that had 10,000 engineers. And I was in the top 5%. I was a member of the group technical staff. And I gotta say that the optics on this don't look good. Because like he said, pretty much everybody agrees that classification is wrong. So we're basing our decision on a wrong classification. And like I said, we're gonna go with it. We're not gonna complain about it, but the optics are not good.
Well, I have a question as well. I'm Jeff Betts. And on the opposite side of the road, the north side of the road, there are a number of homes where the additional 20-foot or 30-foot right of way, depending on when their property was purchased, brings that right of way very close to their front door. And I have to think if they were selling their home and potential buyers were aware of that, it could kill the sale for them. I mean, we've got enough property and we have not seen any changes in that road in the time that we've been there. The
And we've
time
been
that
here 35 years, we're getting 30 feet on each side, well, on our side, 35 years ago. For the same reasoning,
And
and nothing's changed.
I would think it would be worthwhile for the county to go back to the state and say, on what justification do you think you need 100-foot right of way for that road? You know, if they continue, if traffic were to continue up Ute Trail, up Surface Creek, it goes into the national forest. There's not going to be a major thoroughfare going up over the top of the mesa that I can imagine. Not in our lifetime, not in Chris's lifetime. It's an unreasonable classification.
So we're just throwing that out there to get it off our chest because it doesn't feel good to us. It doesn't feel good to us.
I appreciate your comments and you're right, with the past, you know, and when there's unusual circumstances, we have adjusted these right of ways. You know, the challenge is, I mean, I've lived up there 35 years too. And I can tell you that the traffic is much different from what it was 35 years ago where I'm at. So we have to look into the future. We don't just look into the now. We don't just look into the past. We have to look into the future. And we've got a lot of roads out there that we wished 35 years ago, somebody would have thought about the future. Because it's a challenge now for us to do necessary repairs on roads. And we have to go back and spend taxpayer money to buy right of way to make the necessary changes. So, you know, I understand it's a lot of property on your end, gives you a little heartburn, and I don't blame you for that. But we're tasked with the challenge of trying to protect the taxpayers in the future, which we don't always do it right, I can tell you that, but we do our best.
Well, we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
Well, like I said, I've worked for a world-class company and a lot of times management, which is what you guys are, needs feedback. And a lot of people don't give feedback. And one of the things we're trying to do is provide feedback so that Delaware County can get better as they go along.
Thank you very much.
And I respect your professional and courteous comments here today.
Thank you.
Not always do we get that.
Oh, I understand.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I'll move that the board approve PLN 23-103 Betts. Accept the final plat of subdivision approximately 73 acres, creating 2 lots, 67.972 and 5.298, with right-of-way dedication totaling 1.018 acres to Ute Trail Road and 0.125 acres for 2375 Road.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Human Services at 10:30, so we'll stand in recess until 10:30. Okay, welcome back to a regular meeting. It's 10:30 and up next is Human Resources, Mrs. Gallegos and her crew. Welcome, thank you.
Good morning. We have a little bit of a light report today, heavy but light. So we'll start with the financials.
Here's the Pinkable report. I like that the number is going down. It's more just because we're utilizing the Castel system to make sure that, you know, payments are on time each month and automated, so it spreads it evenly instead of, you know, if something's forgotten, then you see it another month and they're not even, they're not showing true even month. So now we got it set. The other thing is I think I have a full comprehension of paying through the trail system. So before we were paying assessment services through check, then the state would reimburse us. But now they pay it and then we reimburse them, so put as much money up front, if that makes sense. So, which is good and easier. Is there any questions on the payable? There wasn't anything I could see.
Questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. For expenditures, it's to be at 83% and we are at 79.2. Still just riding under, which is good. And then for provider payments, the county, we are paying the 8.87% of the benefits. You can see on this one, the blue. Just highlight that. Which is about average. Any questions on that?
I have none, no.
I have a little LEAP update. So we are about 200 applications higher than we were at this time last year, supposedly. I was trying to confirm it, but I'm still getting a grasp of the reporting system for LEAP. We've had 957 applications total since October 1st. 731 are approved, 109 are denied, and 117 are pending. The denials are just a failure to provide information. So Tatiana is following up with those cases to try and get that information in the system, see if we can get those people approved so we can bring more money into our county. We have paid 142,000 in LEAP benefits so far since October 1st to the county members.
What do you attribute the additional to?
I would say it's the mail outs.
The outreach.
Yep, so sending out those postcards that went to all of the addresses. It made the application process streamlined in a way, but also made, I think, more people aware of how easy it is to apply for that program. It's not as difficult as applying for other things, even within human services, so.
So I know this is 100% pass-through money here, but how much increase in staff time have we seen because of this increase in applications?
The applications are actually still processed by Goodwill, so the only staff time is Tatiana's time, in which she just assists with getting the verifications in to overturn those denials. So we receive about $20,000 a year to compensate for her staff time, so we allocate some of that in her time accounting as well. So she has like hours during the day that she's available and works directly.
So we're not going over in our general fund to compensate for that then?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
We're making sure to code it correctly too, so that way we can use all of that money that LEAP gives us. Even the front desk girls that are doing the intake work, we're making sure that they charge that time to LEAP now because we had previously.
Good. Thank you.
Are these applications on paper or on computer or both?
Mostly computer. The way they do it, I believe, if I remember the little thing, is that if you were an applicant last year, they'll mail you an application. If you request a mail application or a paper application, you can get that from our office or mailed. But the majority are online because it's faster to be approved.
And what are the parameters most of the denials are based on?
Verifications. So if they don't have an income verification, or if they're asking for, whether it's your address verification or like your ID, your identification, like your driver's license, if you don't have some of those things or you miss turning some of those in, they can deny it for that reason. So that's where Tatiana does the outreach to follow up and get those overturned.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 89 of the 109 denials were because they didn't provide everything. So she'll track that and follow each application, reaching out to them and getting to see if we can get them approved.
Good.
Very good.
All right, so moving on to the next piece, I think a lot of what today's agenda is talking about things that you all heard at the conference. And so that's a lot of what my reporting is today. I did listen to the JBC hearing yesterday in which CCAP was presenting. And there was still a lot of questions. And we're still seeing the same information, which is that they are projecting a $20 million increase from just the provider rates. When the counties run the numbers just from the October numbers, it looks significantly higher than that. It looks to be about 25 million. So there's a shortfall there, but we're also gonna see a shortfall with the total rule implementation by 2026 of 33 million. And so I think there's still a hope that from the state's perspective, the Department of Early Childhood, that there will be federal money coming in, and we just don't know. As those federal rules changed last year during legislative session, our state decided to put them into statute where other states didn't. And so that's where we are in a bind in which we are required to implement the provider rates, which is a 3-year increase. So it's a third and a third and a third. And then also when we get to the enrollment-based pay, and that's where it's going to be significant in the way that it's going to affect counties that it didn't previously. So we normally spent about a third of our allocation in CCAP. We're projected to be very close to that, if not overspent. Counties like us are expected to be overspent, and they believe most all counties by the spring will be on a wait list or freeze. So despite being on a wait list or freeze, you still have to provide daycare for TANF eligible families and for child welfare. So regardless of having one of those, even if you implement that process, which does take a while to do, you still have to continue to pay the child care. The county's responsible for paying that out as well in those 2 areas. So we're just watching our numbers. We're working, there is the financial director in Adams County, Nick, has volunteered. We are very gracious. All counties are. He's running every county's numbers and has created a program to watch this for all of us to be able to do. And so as a county, all counties can come together to work together to push state to make a change hopefully and either fund the program, or we're gonna have to look at what other options they have. So there's a county attorneys group that's getting together as well to look at some of these things. So John might be having some fun time with human services potentially, depending on where that group decides to go. And really, when you look at it as a whole, a lot of times you see directors in these meetings with state when you're fighting with the state, or you're working on different options or trying to navigate new guidance on usually one issue. And that's not what's happening right now. It's the 3 issues, right? So CCAP is happening with TANF and 1259 coming in, the estimated costs there, and what that's going to do to our reserves. I did put kind of a cheat sheet graphic in there from what that looks like, of how that will impact our reserves and the state reserves in order to fulfill the obligations of House Bill 1259. And then they're thinking about a 3.4 million cut to core, which is how we pay for all of our therapeutic services in child welfare, supervised visitation, life skills, mentoring, mental health, behavioral health treatment, and substance abuse treatment. So all 3 are taking a hit right now. And I think that was quite the theme of part of the CCI conference as well. And so I wanted to highlight those pieces that it will, if this continues this way, it will impact our ability to serve families through childcare. It'll impact our ability to have prevention contracts that we normally do through TANF. So through TANF, we help fund the alternative school through the school district, backpack program, Haven House, things like that. It will affect our ability to have those contracts, and then it'll affect our ability to pay for services that are non-Medicaid services for families and child welfare. So that's an impact to a large part of our community. We do have a lot of even prevention cases that we serve, kids that are not entering the child welfare system, and we are providing services to them so they do not come into either juvenile justice or child welfare. And I think, gosh, I want to say maybe 35 now cases we have of families that we're just providing services through court. So all of those impacts I think we'll see. And we're trying to navigate all of those at the same time and hoping that there will be some adjustments and changes that will help counties our size. But I think from small to large counties, it's gonna affect all, so it's not just any category. So we're just trying to work together and come to a good conclusion on that. But I don't know if there's anything else you want to add related to CCAP or TANF.
The CCAP, we talked about just preparing policies for the withdrawal or the freezes and a wait list, just in case Delta County has never done a freeze or had a wait list. So in preparation for that, we will probably develop some policies to have those in place.
How many on the wait list do you think might happen? Would there be a whole bunch or just a few?
I don't know. I think we don't, because we've only spent a third of our allocation, anyone that was eligible was able to receive CCAP. So we've never been in a place where we've had to be in a wait list or freeze. So I don't know what that looks like. And I think, you know, even if we announce it, that we're going on a wait list, one of the things we have to do is announce that to the community. We have to post it and share that information. And a lot of times people then come in and apply right away, and you still have to honor those before you even get on the wait list too. So you could see more applicants coming in before then and maybe less on a wait list then. It just kind of depends. And I think because we've never done it, it'll be a first for all of us, honestly. Anything for TANF that you want to add? I know you just said CCAP, but I can move on to eligibility. For eligibility, I'm proud to say that we received our most recent Medicaid incentives were tied to the survey that went out. And so of that survey, they are asking questions such as, you know, did you receive your benefits timely? Were you treated with respect? And there's a couple other questions. And so out of our rating, we had a 3.95 out of 5, and receiving services in a timely manner is 80%. And that were you treated with respect was 87%. That the community felt that they were treated with respect when meeting with the technician. But our application processing timeless. So our APT rate, which is the thing that the statistic that is followed, and we are required to hold a 95%. November, we were at 98.61, and so we continue to be at 95% and above.
And you're short-staffed.
We are. They work very, very hard. And this past month, since November was a short month, we did have some supervisors put in overtime as well and come in on the weekends to get things done because we had a lot of redeterminations to process in that last week. So.
Yeah, and our overall rating was a 3.95. The state overall rating was a 4.1. So we're not too far off.
Very good.
General assistance, that fund, we don't spend very much of it. We haven't, that has just never changed since unwinding BHE. Child welfare. So we did see an uptick in removals this month. We are continuing with differential response. And so families are starting to continually see us more partnering and engaging. And so I think caseworkers are getting more used to the feel of what that looks like. We do still have an increase in jury trials. Hopefully we don't have one this week. Depends on how court goes today. But we have seen that increase in litigation and things like that with families. So that continues. And we have seen the Office for Respondent Counsel has been more active in appeals also. So we've been dealing with that and having things sometimes overturned and go all the way back to the beginning. So that's just something I think that it's not uncommon for other counties as well. It's happening everywhere. And then the only thing I'll add for adult protection is we're still looking for a caseworker. We did see a decrease in referrals, which is great since we're down to caseworker, but still looking for a caseworker there and hoping to attract a candidate soon. But if there's anything else you want to add to either of those?
Just that everyone is working really hard and committed to the values of the county and serving the community as best as possible. And stepping up. We also have 2 child welfare workers on leave for the next 3 months. And so they're doubling up and caseloads are getting pretty high right now. but they're hanging in there.
Great, thank you.
Why do you have two on leave, maternity leave or?
Yeah.
Yes.
They didn't read the manual.
Two beautiful baby girls. Easy, guys.
No more asking questions.
Any questions for us today?
Did you guys decorate for the holiday?
Not the whole building, but we have little pockets of decorating throughout the office. So, we're having, so we kind of revamped our fun bunch in the last year. Before it was, led by some people that had been with the county for a while, but some left. And so we needed to revamp it. And so we made it more formalized, but employee driven. And so they've done some fun things by sending out surveys of what they want to see, how they want to be appreciated. And so we are having, oddly enough, a nacho potluck for Christmas. That was what they voted on. And so it's a little different, but fun at the same time and not, the traditional foods that everybody else will be eating at home and at family and friends. So they get a little bit of variance there. They staff also put together stockings. What was all in the little stockings?
Was like motivational pens, stress balls, hand sanitizer, tissues, little snacks.
Yeah.
Things that, you need at your desk, especially during the holidays.
Yeah, so those went out to all the staff and then you can leave your stocking out and people sometimes will just go buy and stuff in it and just celebrate each other. So been doing that. And then
We're doing a drive for Abraham Connection, so we can donate different things. They give us a list of what they need, so that's in the break room. And then eligibility is doing the tree.
We have a giving tree out front in the lobby, so staff have donated if you want to, you can donate anything to hang on there, so we have a lot of like winter socks, scarves, hats, some hygiene stuff, and we just restock it every day with new stuff.
And we partnered with Project 127, and they will be out here on the 23rd for 2 hours with gifts that were donated to them, brand new gifts for children, for foster and kinship parents to be able to come in and pick out some things for the kids in their home, and anything left over we'll be able to give to families that still have their children in the home. So everyone's excited about that.
It is pretty neat. Yeah.
we're busy little bees over there during this month. So, yeah, I think that's all we have. So wish you a wonderful holiday season and thank you for supporting us throughout this year and for fighting for us and fighting for human services in the community as we go into the next year. So appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Annie, you guys, as we get into this legislative session, let us know when and how to advocate.
Yeah, I think Katie first, well, I think she's gonna be out for a little bit, so her replacement, we've had a lot of meetings and I think there's gonna be a lot to talk about, so. Yeah, but I'll be on the meetings as well, and then if we ever need to talk about it afterwards, we can too, because I think it's gonna affect each county a little bit differently, but it will have some type of an effect, and so we just need to be ready for it and then prepare for what next steps.
Does it make sense, Amy, to just anticipate some work sessions with the board?
Probably.
In the first quarter of next year?
Yeah,
something like that.
I think that's a good idea.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Next up is county attorney at 11 o'clock. So we will stand in recess until 11 o'clock. Thank you. Well, welcome back. Next on the commissioner business list is the county attorney, John Bear, with several items.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. I have 3 items for the board's consideration this morning, all under regular session. The first is the board's consideration of an assignment of lease regarding hangar number 335 at Blakefield Airport from Highland Properties 1824 LLC to 3620 Pecos Street LLC. The board may remember we just entered this lease last summer. And the reason it's being transferred, so quickly is because it has to be. This is a 1031 exchange. And so the current holder is the 1031 exchange, company, and then the new holder is essentially the buyer or the hangar owner. So, this has been an interesting process. Actually, lots and lots of red tape, to kind of jump through the hoops, for the 1031 exchange. But that probably is to be expected with Internal Revenue Service requirements and that sort of thing. So it's been an interesting process. I say a lot of red tape, but just a lot of communication going back and forth. The situation itself is relatively straightforward, but a lot of communication. So anyways, that's why we're back here. Now it's closing and funding, and then it'll go to the new owners who's under an LLC. So anyways, any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I have none.
I'll move the board approve an assignment of lease for Blakefield Hangar 335 from Highland Properties 1824 LLC to 3620 Pecos Street LLC. Authorized chair to sign.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have next on consideration is the board's consideration for airport ground lease regarding hangar number 185 at North Fork Valley Airport and a sale from Heine to Carville. This is a little unique, I say unique, but we just did one a few weeks ago. Hadn't done one quite that way. But I think the nature of how and when these airports get developed. This is essentially a sale from Heine's to Kevin Carville. The Heine, this hangar was built in 1999, and so the hangar lease that the Heine's had is up next, basically 12 months from now. And so just like the last one I presented a few weeks back or a month or so ago, I think it just makes sense, and I worked with the buyer to go ahead, let's just go ahead and get a new lease instead of doing an assignment right now and then, 10 months from now coming back with an assignment or with a new lease. So having said that, what I do, and if you care to, you can look at paragraph 33. It kind of references those old documents. It also puts the new buyer, Mr. Carville, in the same position he would have been. So he's not being penalized with a higher rate for this next 1 year and that sort of thing. So anyway, so the rate will stay at a lower amount, calculated at the 12 cents a square foot for this calendar year 2025. And then for calendar year 2026 is when the new rate begins and so on. So that's why this one's a little unusual. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. And I communicate that with accounting and that sort of thing. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I'll move that the board approve the transfer and sale of ground lease from Heine to Carville. And
Authorize the chair to sign.
well, I was looking for a hangar number on that.
This is hangar 185.
Okay, hangar number 185, and authorize the chairman to sign.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done.
Okay, lastly, for the board's consideration this morning is the Delta County Code of Ethics and Conduct. The board will remember that there was some discussion a couple months ago about the possibility of adopting a code of ethics and conduct. There was some slight modifications made to a draft that was out there. I made those modifications. And now this is back before the board for consideration. there was discussion about this possibly being adopted at this meeting, but then being effective for January 1st, 2025. So any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any feedback, John, from anybody outside of commissioners here with this?
No, but I don't really know whether this was routed to anyone.
Okay.
I did not route this to anyone.
Okay.
But that was something that I was in a discussion as part of that, so.
Okay, I didn't know if there was any discussions had outside of this, so, okay.
And this will be for new employees?
No, this is board members.
So this is for boards and
Board
commissions,
commissions.
so appointed boards and commissions.
Okay.
And it is both for existing members as well as new members. That's the way the language reads. And would be the way, again, this is for the board's consideration. The effective date of this would be January 1. So I think practically speaking, although it doesn't necessarily say this, but practically speaking, whoever, I guess, manages the board. Does that make sense? I mean, this board appoints people to boards and commissions and committees and that sort of thing, but whoever the staff member is who's kind of managing that particular board, I'm just gonna, thinking the planning commission, while that probably would be our director of planning, would be kind of charged with kind of making sure that these are taken care of and housed and that sort of thing. And the same thing with any other boards or commissions that which there's literally dozens.
Yeah, this was developed based on the Montrose model, if I remember right.
It was.
And it was, I think it's pretty well done.
And that's accurate, Commissioner Coons. I was provided with a very well fleshed out sample from Montrose County. I did make a few clarifications and modifications, but I think could tell the county better, but for the most part, this is a Montrose County. We're borrowing it from them.
It reflects what you all had asked for, and so. If there's any further changes?
It covers on conflict of interests and particularly that section D, respect for fellow staff and public.
No questions.
Well, I want to be careful. I don't know where it lives. I'm just presuming that practically speaking, that's probably how it might be implemented, but that's not language in there. Maybe I'm just making that presumption. The board can determine exactly how they want to implement it, and that sort of thing, so.
I have no questions.
I'm good.
You'll make the motion.
I will move that the board approve and adopt the Delta County Code of Ethics and Conduct for members of boards and commissions appointed by county commissioners, and for it to go into effect January 1st, 2025.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so done. Thank you.
Actually, already all three of you have signed this one.
Could you send us a signed copy of this digitally? Okay.
Thank you, commissioners. I have no further business before the board this morning.
John, thanks for seeing this through to the end of this one.
Of course.
It's been probably not quite a year in the making.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, everybody have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and stay safe out there. Thank you very much. We'll stand adjourned.